Hi, good morning, Common Ground. My name is Norman Connor, and I'm a former minister that has been coming to Common Ground for about 3.5 years now. I was in the ministry for 25 years. I started as a youth pastor and then planted a church actually right after Common Ground in King George, Virginia. We had a lot of great years in the early years, but near the end, there were some things that just didn't work out, and we ended up having to close the church. A big part of that was my theology shifting from viewing God as a God of wrath to a God of grace. There were some other things that I'll talk about in a little bit, but when we closed and when I came to Common Ground, I had tremendous anger towards people and church in general. And I swore I'd never go back to a church, and I was very close to leaving faith altogether. My wife, Gaiva, who many of y'all know that works in children's area, she said that she wanted to go to church, and I wanted to be with her, so we ended up at Common Ground. And I am extremely thankful to Gaiva for being the godly woman she is and being a rock over our marriage and the times that I've been broken. When this happened, it was hard trying to find meaning, and looking for a new career in my mid 50s was something I never expected, and it brought some financial hardships on us as a family. But more so, it was draining emotionally and spiritually to me. And so I looked into being a chaplain 3.5 years ago, but at the time I was more concerned about making money than being open to a new calling into ministry. So I didn't pursue that. I pursued some other things. None of those worked out. And last year I started an internship at Mary Washington as a chaplain. I looked back into it. The first year was pretty brutal because I had to come to terms with all the junk in my life. I learned to quit blaming others for my own failures and to take responsibility for my part in the closing of Gateway, which was our church. And during that same period, I had begun a journey of reconstructing my faith and deciding what I really believed about God and the world we live in, what I believed about God, what I believed about people, the Bible, everything. So all of that was happening kind of at the same time. When I started my internship, my very first page when I was on call was a death. And I had no idea how to minister to a grieving family that I personally didn't know. As a matter of fact, I experienced a death of a patient on my first 3 on-call shifts. And I knew then that I needed help beyond my pastoral care skills. And also I was still very broken, dealing with a lot. So one night I cried out to God as I started my shift, and I prayed for the first time in over 3 years. Psalm 51, 10 through 11 came to mind. It was, "Create in me a pure heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. Do not cast me from your presence or take your Holy Spirit from me." I had reached that point that I knew I just needed my heart to be cleansed. If I was going to be effective or anything as a chaplain, I knew I needed something beyond me. And I believe it was this prayer and grace shown by my wife, Gaiva, Greg, during the men in the church on the men's retreat, and others at Common Ground that began the renewal of my faith. I'm actually now in the middle of a 1-year residency as a chaplain at Mary Wash, and I've been with countless grieving families that have lost loved ones. I've sat with a couple holding their dead baby. I've sat with a mother of a 10-year-old girl that was playing one moment and died the next. I've been with a mother and father of a teenager who was shot from a drug deal gone bad. I've sat with a mother with a young adult daughter that died of cancer. And I've been with couples that have been married for 40 years as they cried out about losing their spouses, and adults losing elderly parents, and grandchildren losing a grandparent, and even COVID patients dying alone. And our culture doesn't like to talk or think about death, even though we know it will happen, one day, and we always say, just not today. And that is why the sting of death is what it is because it always catches us when we're least expecting it. Being a chaplain has made me somewhat aware of my own mortality, that and declining health over the past few years. And it's also helped me to understand what is really important in life. Last year, I came across a meditation called Be Here Now that helped me focus on living in the moment. It talked about putting the past behind you and not anticipating the future, but just to live in the freedom of the moment that we're currently in. And I'm still learning how to do this, but it did start bringing me tremendous peace and freedom and appreciation for living in each moment. I've learned also that my faith has rhythms of incredible highs and disastrous lows. Much like the words of the old hymn, Come Thou Fount, I relate to the words, prone to wander, Lord, I feel it, prone to leave the God I love. But I know that my faith is renewed when I open my eyes to see the Imago Dei, or the image of God in those around me. And when I love God with my whole heart and my whole being, and love others as I love myself. And also when I do to others what I would want done to me. I've also learned that even if we want nothing to do with God, or when we try to run away from God, God will never leave us, nor will he forsake us, especially in the midst of pain. And so the words of that same hymn, here's my heart, Lord, take and seal it for thy courts above, is kind of my theme now. The Bible tells us that God is love, and it is my belief that when we see love, we are seeing God. So now my prayer is that I can be a conduit of God's love as I encounter people, not just here in our faith community, but when I go to the store, and I'm working my best to do that online as well. Just like my friends and family have been conduits of God's love to me in many of my darkest hours. So may we all learn to be more graceful and loving than judgmental and hateful. And I just want to say thank you, Greg and Common Ground, for allowing me to share with you this morning. God bless you.